Hello and welcome back. Today, I'm trying to change the strings on some of my guitars. Some of you may remember the neck rest I printed and showed in an older video. This one worked fine, but I lent it to a friend a while back, and well, you know how that goes. Since then, I've been using anything I can find to prop up the neck of the guitar. And a filament box works pretty well, but it's bulky and ends up getting in the way, and when I'm cleaning the neck or whatever, it'll just slide across it, so I decided to make my own. I looked around at what all was available to try to get some inspiration, and this style of one kept popping up over and over, so it inevitably caught my eye. And here's what I came up with in Tinkercad, and I'm just going to show you how I quickly made that. So let's jump right into it. First, I grabbed a block and made it 60 by 90 by 60. Then, I grabbed a round roof shape, turned it, made it 60 by 10 by 65, and turned it into a hole. Then, I just used the align tool to align it to the side of the block. Next, I duplicated it, turned it at 90 degrees, and used the align tool again to align it with the top of the block. Then, I just repeated this for the last two sides, and grouped everything together. Now I could just print it like this and it would probably work just fine, but I wanted to make it look a little more attractive, so I grabbed the box whole and held shift to shrink all the sides down to 10 millimeters. Then I stretched the length out to 70 just to make sure it would go all the way through the box. Then I turned it on an angle to make it more like a diamond. I duplicated that and moved it over about as far as I thought would look good, and clicked duplicate again a couple times, which automatically placed the next duplicates the same distance away from the last. Then I highlighted and duplicated 3 of those diamonds and moved them to the top. I duplicated them again, and I tried to space these equal distance, like from left to right to top to bottom. I know it wasn't equal distance, but I didn't expect it to be. I knew I'd have to fine tune it, so just keep that in mind if you're doing something like this. It's also easier to align them on the actual grid of the work plane, but for this demonstration I just eyeballed it in the end. Anyway, I grouped each row of these so that I could easily align them to center with each other using the alignment tool. And then I went into more fine-tuning of the distances. To get the curved sides on the outermost diamonds, I just ungrouped the roofs from the block and duplicated the outer 2. Then I grouped the block back together and moved it out of the way. I drug each roof in equally to the diamonds by holding the shift key and pressing the arrow keys on my keyboard the same amount of times for each one, in their respective direction. Then I turned the diamonds solid, grouped them together with the roofs, and then I just turned the diamonds back to holes. At that point I grabbed all the diamonds and aligned them to the center of the block. As you can see, I fine-tuned the distances a little bit more before grouping them all together. I wanted there to be equal spacing between each diamond. Now, you could just leave it this way, but I wanted to get rid of those sharp edges, so I exported from Tinkercad into Fusion 360. And this is the free version of Fusion 360, in case anyone wants to try it out. And a side note, I'm still pretty new to Fusion, so there may be alternative ways to accomplish what I'm doing here. This is just how I did it. Anyway, once I was in Fusion, I grabbed the face of the block and came up here and clicked Modify to open the menu. Then I clicked on Edit Face. Back at the model, if you hover the mouse over the center, you'll see a little white dot. I just clicked on that dot and moved the face in 10 millimeters. This gives it a sort of concave effect, where the center of the face drops back but the outer edges don't. After that, I clicked OK and it took shape. At this angle, you can really see the concave. And then I just repeated those steps on the other side. After that, I grabbed all the edges by holding shift and clicking them one by one. Then I came up here and clicked this fillet icon and typed in the number 2 to give all the edges a 2mm fillet. Next, I wanted to get rid of the harsh edges on all these diamonds. So So I held shift and clicked all of their edges, including the inside of the diamonds, making sure that I selected every single edge. Once I had all those selected, I clicked fillet again and typed 1 to give them a 1mm fillet and clicked OK. And that's pretty much it. Now I could save it as a mesh by coming up here and clicking the arrow next to bodies, and then right-clicking on body 1 and going to save as mesh. I clicked OK on the next window and named it whatever I wanted and then saved it. Now I can just open it in Cura and get it ready to print. In Cura, I just used a low quality profile with a 20% infill, and I turned on supports because I wanted to keep the bottom arch as intact as possible. But when I click slice, you'll see it added supports on some of the diamonds. I don't want supports there. I think it will print fine without them. So I'm just going to click on the prepare tab up top, then I'm going to click the block, and then I'm going to click the support blocker icon from the bottom left menu. Then I'll just click anywhere on the block and it should place a box that I can then scale and move to where I don't want supports. And now that I slice again, you'll see I only have supports on the bottom arch. And with that, it's time to print. So here it is printed. Even at low quality, it still looks pretty nice. Now I just need to get those supports off of it. I think the concave faces on it is very cool looking. You don't really notice it from a distance, but when you get up close and actually put it in your hand, you can really tell it's there. It really stands out. And the whole thing just feels really strong. Kinda want to put my weight on it to see if it will hold me. But I shouldn't do that, right? Nah. To keep it from marring the guitar neck, I thought I would go back to the Solvol shipping box and grab a piece of this packing foam because I knew it was strong enough but soft enough not to leave a mark on any of the guitars. And this piece is pretty thin. So I cut a piece off of it and grabbed a roll of double-sided tape and cut some pieces to fit the block. Once I had all that in place, I grabbed a piece of foam and my X-Acto knife and started cutting. I used a cardboard box so I didn't cut up my mouse pad or desk. And it's probably just because my X-Acto is dull, but this took a lot longer than I wanted, and the edges look super jacked up. So I had the bright idea to grab my soldering iron with an old tip and use that to cut the foam. And it worked great, but I quickly realized I was inhaling something I probably shouldn't be, so I just went back to the X-Acto. When all the pads were cut, I peeled the tape back and stuck the pads on one by one and touched them up if I needed. And here's the finished product. Does it work? I mean, yeah, for all intents and purposes. Albeit it's pretty wobbly on the tall side because of the foam pads. They're thicker than I wanted, so the actual block doesn't touch the desk to keep it sturdy. Did it look good? Well, no. Not to me anyway. And that's when I remembered that TPU was a thing and that I had some. So I jumped back into Tinkercad and came up with these sort of pads that follow the contour of the neck slot on the block. In Cura, I test printed one with an infill of 5% just to make sure it would be squishy and soft enough. Then I popped a roll of TPU in the fixed dry filament dryer and kinda looped the PTFE tube over the spool holder of the SV06 and started printing. And here that is, nice and soft. I'm confident it won't mar any of the guitar's necks. So I went ahead and stuck it on the block after removing a piece of foam, and that looks pretty good. So I went ahead and printed 3 more to finish it up. And there you have it. I'm glad I didn't stick with the foam pads because while mostly functional, I just didn't like the way they looked. I spent a lot of time making the block look nice, so I thought, why should I keep the ugly foam if I don't like it? Now it's time to test out some guitars on it. First up, it holds an acoustic pretty well. And here's my 7-string, and it sits on there nicely too. Let's check how bad it wobbles compared to the pads. Not bad at all. It's safe to say I'm pretty happy with it. Alright, that's all I've got for you today. If you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed. I appreciate you tuning in. Catch you in the next one. And as always, have the best day ever.